Earlier this month, I asked for some questions and you delivered. So let's A some cues. Apologies in advance for the many name mispronunciations that will follow. Kalajakia Blakemore asked, "You've said you have an art background. What is your degree in?" Fine art. Dequan Dooley asked, "Is YouTube your full-time job? And if not, what is?" I edit videos for other channels, so if I combine that with my own channel, both in terms of hours and income, YouTube could definitely be considered my full-time job. I wouldn't really define anything as full-time though. I prefer my career, mezzo style. Dr. Sally LePage asked, "What should I have for supper tonight? A single plum floating in perfume served in a man's hat." Or like, I don't know, couscous. KJHT asked, "Do you like camp at all? If so, what campy movies, shows, etc. do you like?" Yeah, at least by my understanding of it. My video on Evil Dead went a bit into camp, and I like basically any campy horror film. And I really like the show Adam Ruins Everything, which I'd never thought of as camp until I heard it described as camp, and that person's right. It is camp, and its campness is a big part of why I like it. Dark Fuzz asked, "Whereabout in the UK are you from?" and said they're from the Midlands. Half of my family is from the Midlands. But I grew up in the South, which is why I have a southern accent, but tend to speak with a more northerly dialect, like pronouncing things bath and grass instead of bath and grass. Sean Moore asked, "Do you think that YouTube videos / the video essay in general will ever gain the respect of academia? For example, could there ever be some kind of visual peer-reviewed academic journal?" You're in luck, Sean. It already exists. In Transition is a peer-reviewed journal of video essays specifically about film and moving image work, and video essays definitely have the respect of academia. There's a whole other academic video essay community. I'd recommend looking at the Sight and Sound end-of-year list for work along those lines. Full disclosure, I did help put the list together this year. And the video essay conference I spoke at last year in Germany was predominantly academic in nature. I do think there's a divide between the kind of work I do and the kind of work academic video essayists do, but I certainly never felt disrespected. And this also answers another Sean's question. What were your favourite essays of last year? Because you can see my list in the Sight and Sound poll. My list is a bit contrary though, so don't take it as being comprehensive. I put all Gorilla Glue ads but perfectly cut in prime position at the top of the list, and I regret nothing. What's your biggest source of motivation, physical or otherwise? For essays, if I don't write ideas down and force them into something, they won't let me sleep. I'm kind of nervous about what physical motivation could be, like a wild animal will chase me if I stop making things. James Reeds asked, "How do you manage your content diet? Do you spend much time reading news on social media?" I used to keep up with the news via The Guardian's Daily Digest email, but then Brexit happened and now I just use that time to lie on the floor and cry instead. I don't spend that much time on social media because I keep the number of people I follow low to keep it manageable, so instead of an endless scroll, I reach the place I was yesterday and it's like achievement unlocked. You can leave now. There were a lot of favourites questions, but I actually don't really have favourites. It might be because I don't rewatch things or reread things ever, unless I'm showing it to someone else or reconsuming something for an essay. But I do re-listen to music, so I can more easily answer Hypatia's question, what kind of music do you listen to and what are your favourite artists? I listen to most genres from metal-ish stuff to indie stuff. I don't know genres. But the artists I think I currently most frequently listen to are Regina Spektor, Advanced Bass / Cassiotone for the Painfully Alone, 65 Days of Static, Malcolm Middleton, Public Service Broadcasting, Semisonic, Tegan and Sarah, and the Hamilton soundtrack. Also, YouTube's own Patricia Taxon. And Radiohead and Pink Floyd are legacy candidates because they entirely defined my late teens. Goblin Cow asked, "In your own time, what sorts of things generally take your interest to learn about? Are there any podcast channels or writers you find yourself drawn to?" Something I'm really interested in that doesn't necessarily come into my videos is like technology, digital culture, and social media. Although I guess I have kind of started making videos about those things. And seeing as you mentioned podcasts, I really like the podcast Reply All, which is, broadly speaking, about the internet, and Delete This, which is about Twitter. The other thing I'm really interested in is relationships, whether that's friendships, romantic relationships, family, or just the ways we interact with each other. I really like Heavyweight, which investigates unresolved tensions from someone's past, and Nicole Byer's podcast, Why Won't You Date Me, where she asks, why won't you date me? I also want to mention the Anthropocene Reviewed, Reasonably Sound, and Have You Heard George's podcast as the best essay podcast I know. And really the only ones I know, so if anyone has any suggestions. Oh, and Goblin Cow also asked, did you ever watch Every Frame a Painting? I missed that show. Oh, the two great losses of YouTube are Every Frame a Painting and Idea Channel. Let's take a moment to honour those no longer with us. I will remember you. Max Buttrell asked, Twin Peaks The Return, television or cinema? Television. It was released serially on TV. Come at me, Lynch. My real issue with The Return as cinema position is that it partially seems to come from the elevation of film as a medium over everything else. Like, Twin Peaks must be cinema because it's too good for TV. And I want television to get the respect it deserves. Alternatively, I think to call Twin Peaks film is to collapse the boundaries of categorization to the extent that the very question collapses in on itself and therefore becomes meaningless. So our options are either The Return is television or nothing is anything. And that's a position I can get on board with. Lito Sophie asked, do you have a book that most people like, let's say, Harry Potter, which doesn't do anything for you? In other words, a controversial opinion on a beloved franchise/story. Oh, I had to really think about how mad do I want to make people in deciding how and whether to answer this question? But I'm going to go all out. Because, yeah, Harry Potter, but the list of things people like that I don't care about is endless. Like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, any kind of cinematic universe. But it's not really a controversial opinion. I don't think they're bad, I just don't care about them. But having said that, I do love to talk about Harry Potter houses. Like star signs, Myers-Briggs, Harry Potter houses. FDA 192 asked, would you ever consider doing podcasts again? I really liked the unscripted nature of them and thought they were a really fun alternative to the videos. I love podcasts, as I guess you know now. And like probably every other person, starting a podcast is definitely on my list of things to do in the future, but it wouldn't be talking about media like last time. Most people probably don't even know about the Lost podcast that I did for 3 months with my friend Megan. I think the decision to end it was pretty mutual, just based on how life gets in the way. But I personally realized I don't want to make that kind of podcast. The world doesn't need another podcast where two people discuss various forms of entertainment. Talking about online media, however, like YouTube, social media, memes, the digital landscape at large, still very much on the table. Slothman, Sarah Bentov, and Dark Fuzz asked how I got into making video essays. I started making video essays without actually knowing what a video essay was, or even that YouTuber was a thing. I've been on YouTube since 2005, but I was only ever making fan videos, and my YouTube world was entirely based around that. But I'd seen Lindsay Ellis's videos on her own website, and I'd seen Every Frame a Painting on Vimeo, and that kind of thing seemed like a place I could channel my desire to edit together existing footage. The first year of videos on my channel were really just meant as a portfolio for getting editing work. Mortal Pal asked, do you have an academic background in cinema or philosophy? How did you get familiar with the complex sources you use? While I studied fine art, that did involve a lot of philosophy and cultural theory, so that gave me a grounding in the basics like Foucault, Barthes, Baudrillard, Deleuze. Not that I ever know what Deleuze is talking about. But I mostly read one thing, which mentions another thing, then I'll read that thing, and it'll mention another thing. Then that thing will mention a multi-channel moving image installation, and then I'll look that up, and then someone will have written a thing about it, which mentions another thing, and it's just things all the way down. Nico Valloni also asked, how do you make choices of what to keep and what to leave out? Those choices mostly come down to what sources work best together and what's the overall story I'm trying to tell. Sometimes there's a great text, but if it's not a team player, it can't come to the game. I'm going to group together all the process-based questions, summarized best by Ian from Innuendo Studios as how you do stuff. Logan asks, do you have multiple projects on the go at different stages? At this point, the time a video is actually released could be 1 to 2 years after I initially started making notes for it. So they have a long gestation period. I currently have 42 collections of notes with idea headings. 10 of those headings are in bold, which is how I identify the ideas that might be ready to be born. I'm regretting the terminology choices I've made here. But I wouldn't count any of those as on the go. I'm not actively seeking out research, but when something even remotely connected comes along, it gets added to the rat king of notes. Once I've picked which idea will be the next video, it's a pretty linear process. I do more specific research, I organize my nightmare mess of a notes page into 3 rough parts, edit out as much as I can, cry, reassemble everything in a desperate hope of forging something cohesive, cry some more, randomly see or read something that finally leads to a breakthrough, record the audio, edit the video, export the video, notice numerous errors, fix the errors, export the video again, notice more errors, whack it up on YouTube anyway because fuck it, and repeat. Sarah Bentov asked, how do you decide what to make a video on? Mostly it's just whichever of my bold headings I'm most excited about at the time, but I do also attach some ideas to certain times of the year. Obviously, Halloween is a key thematic marker, but I also feel like some ideas are summer ideas, some spring, some winter. My video on the colour blue really felt like a December video, and I'd had it planned for that month since January that year. Leon Bickel asked, what are the parts of your creative process in making your video essays that you think are most counterintuitive to outsiders? This is hard because I don't know how outsiders are perceiving things, but I'm going to relate it to another of your questions. What are overlooked topics do you think are most deserving of video essays but you haven't figured out how to approach? I think this is the opposite of how I work. Like, the approach comes first, or at least concurrently with the topic. I don't really consider ideas until the approach is there. And this also covers Moses Lozano's questions. What is one film/video game or idea that you want to cover but are finding hard to talk about? I tend to think of some kind of theoretical through line first, or at least one develops over various notes I've taken over the course of a year, until it's snowballed to the point of having enough to make some kind of cohesive essay. Sometimes I attach that to a specific piece of media, sometimes I have various media come in and out. Occasionally an essay idea will spring up already directly tied to one particular work. This was the case with the Goose Game video. But I never pick the media first, then work out how to talk about it after. Basically, I've become a philosophy and social commentary channel masquerading as a media analysis channel. Willow Miku asked, I want to get into writing more, but I have dyslexia and a bad attention span. How do you keep yourself focused? The start of my process is very unfocused. I collect notes on things I happen to read, see, or hear and add them to various elastic bandball style note clusters if I think they fit together. This means that by the time I actually come to do proper research and actually write the essay, I have a lot of the bones from which to build the skeleton already there. I know which parts of the day are best for what kind of work. Writing almost always happens first thing in the morning, and I switch tasks frequently, which might help with staying focused as I just focus on different things for shorter amounts of time. But other than that, I can't really help you. I pick ideas I'm enthusiastic about, and that enthusiasm tends to carry me through the whole process. Helena Barakel asked which part of the video essay creation process is the most challenging for you, and which is the most fun. The most challenging part is trying to fit all the pieces together. I tweeted this a while ago and it remains true. Knowing what to cut out is just as important as knowing what to leave in. And finding the connections that can piece together an essayistic narrative is hard when the pieces keep changing and some connect to 2 other pieces, and sometimes you realize, wait, this is part of an entirely different picture. Like, what kind of jigsaw is this? The most fun is the very start of a new essay, when all this beautiful potential is laid out before me, before I fuck it up. A cat asked, how long does it take to research/write/record/edit, and how do you manage it? I time track my productive labour hours, so I have an exact breakdown of time on last year's essays. Things were getting a bit out of control, which is why I tried to make shorter videos towards the end of last year. Another cat asked, how did you learn to create videos and what programs do you use the most? I learned to edit by making fan videos since back when, before YouTube was even a thing. And I predominantly use Sony Vegas, because back in my day, Sony Vegas was all the rage, and I refused to modernize. Calistefo asked coffee or tea. Oh, coffee and tea. Two more things that can go on the pile. Pat Kelly from Corporis asked, rank the following food items: waffles, pancakes, French toast, biscuits, scones. Well, I'm going to activate my British English powers and take biscuits to mean these, and they're first, and French toast is last because it's just waffles and pancakes, but worse. Then I don't really care about any of these that much. Oh god, they're all going on the pile, aren't they? Mike Leach asked, do you have time to read books still, or has research reading superseded it? Reading is one of the things I'm really trying to make more time for right now. The main problem being, as you suggested, that there isn't really time when there's researching to be done. Something I definitely struggle with is doing useless things. Like, in my online speed video, I referenced Michael Harris's article, I Have Forgotten How to Read, which demands that we read, not scan, not share, not excerpt, but read, patiently, slowly, uselessly. And here I am excerpting his words like the greedy content goblin I am. And I don't actually think that's a bad thing. I think the practice of excerpting is fascinating. But I do acknowledge the difficulty I have with doing things uselessly. Perhaps the worst effect of modern speed is its demand that everything we do be in service of a purpose, usually a capitalist one. I got the audiobook subscription to Life's Library this year, so I guess that's a start. Do you prefer going between focusing on one piece of art and covering a broad topic, as you've started doing, or do you find one more satisfying than the other? I'm definitely more drawn towards broad topics, and I have to rein myself in a lot. But because of that, there is something satisfying in the simplicity of sometimes just focusing on one thing. It's a welcome relief. It's been really interesting reading your posts here reflecting on how you're evolving as a video essayist. Do you have set goals or aims for where you want to be, or are you just enjoying the ride? Definitely more the latter. I want to experiment more with the form and style of the videos I make. Nothing drastic, but just slowly pushing things further. When talking about goals in relation to YouTube, it's hard not to think of the numbers. Those are the YouTube goals I always hear about, but I think I'm in a pretty good place right now. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy the channel is growing, but I also like having a smaller audience. I went from 20k to 40k pretty fast last year and entered what I have now come to term the dead zone, which I define as being between 20 and 80k because, at least in video essay spaces, you don't get a whole lot of channels in this mid-range. And after that happened, I think I did become temporarily more fixated on breaching that upper limit. But having since made friends with other YouTubers, video essayists or otherwise, I think it was just that I was feeling lonely. Like, I was on my own in this dead space between canonically accepted milestones. But that isn't true at all. And I no longer define my peer group by a number that was already pretty meaningless to begin with. So take that, quantified data. I can make my own milestones.